In our previous episode, things got a little tense between Lu Sheng and the executor. But once the misunderstanding cleared up, without our boy knowing, Far quietly kidnapped Lan Chen and his friend, then promised Lu Sheng a generous reward. As the scene shifts to our boy streaking through the atmosphere, before heading off with Far, he decided to head back to Earth before heading out to the Yamu sector. Meanwhile, parked in orbit nearby was a ship so massive it almost looked like a small planet. Far stood by the window, watching Lu Sheng until he disappeared completely from view. Without missing a beat, he ordered every surveillance system on the ship to stay locked on to him, round the clock. He emphasized that not even a single second should slip by without eyes on him. As for the White Mist sector, he believed they'd managed to bluff their way through for now, but he asserted that they still need to keep an eye on them, adding that any signs of movement over there had to be reported immediately. At the same time, he instructed his men to keep a close watch on the two agents, and tells everyone to stay sharp. In response, the three saluted and answered in unison. Far looked satisfied and remarked that as long as Lu Sheng followed through and registered his identity in the Yamu sector, this mission would count as a major success. Back on Earth, our boy finally arrived home. As he reached his neighborhood gate, he noticed there were at least 40 grandmasters scattered across the complex. Even the retired uncles sitting around, the neighbors, the security guards, and the janitors were mostly great grandmasters. He even sensed 2 martial saints in the mix. He couldn't help but chuckle, musing that this might be Earth's most overpowered neighborhood. Still, he quickly pieced it together, noting these people had probably come voluntarily to guard his family. The next moment, he stepped through the front door and cheerfully announced his return. His sister came running, eyes wide with excitement, and declared that her brother was actually the god of military. Their parents rushed over too. His father wanted to know everything, while his mother simply let out a breath of relief now that her son was safe and sound. But seeing the three of them looking at him with so much anticipation, Lu Sheng hesitated for a beat. Then clearing his throat, he proclaimed it was time to stop keeping secrets. He further explained, completely straight-faced, that he was actually a prince from the zombie street. Then he launched into a full-blown backstory cobbled together from the origin of his favorite anime character. Claimed his homeland had been wiped out when he was 3, forcing him to reincarnate here, and now, with his martial talent fully awakened, he had to return, rebuild his legacy, and reclaim his rightful throne. To top it all off, he even pointed at himself and stated that he needed travel funds. If each of them could wire him a little cash, he'd reward them with a whole planet once he took back his crown. Of course, he was just trying to lighten the mood and stop them from worrying, but the three of them were completely stunned nonetheless. Lu Sheng smiled, brushing off the god of military title like it didn't matter. Whether he had that label or not, he was still himself, and more importantly, still their family. He remarked that dinner came first and admitted he was starving. At the table, the food was soon served. As they ate, Lu Sheng laid out what he'd been through lately and explained that he'd be heading into outer space for a while. But he left out the heavier stuff, for example, the destruction of Earth. His sister froze for a moment, then began inspecting him head to toe, wondering if he was really her big bro, while marveling that he had really become the strongest man on the planet, stronger than any martial saint. Their father, on the other hand, was absolutely thrilled and went on saying that their Lu family ancestor must have been blessing them. Their mother stayed grounded as always. To her, none of the titles meant anything, and her son's safety was what mattered. She gently reminded him to take care of his health, and Lu Sheng smiled and replied that he would. The next day, outside the civil building, Lu Sheng and Snowy walked out hand in hand. To him, it was a day worth celebrating. Snowy shot him a teasing glance and asked why. Lu Sheng lifted the marriage certificate and remarked that it was the day the strongest man on the planet officially got hitched. Hearing this, Snowy couldn't hold back her laughter. Lu Sheng's tone softened as he explained that today was also the day he would be heading to space. He promised to return as soon as possible, adding that next time they'd have a real wedding. As he gently hugged Snowy, she whispered a quiet, "Okay." Then he handed her a new communicator gifted by Far, and noted that its battery would last for several years, and this would be how they stayed in touch. With that, he leaped into the sky. Meanwhile, Snowy watched, silently praying for his safe return. The scene then shifts to the spaceship. Far looked ecstatic as he watched Lu Sheng board. He quickly began the tour, and Lu Sheng was surprised to see how vast the interior was, saying it felt more like a floating city than a ship. With a snap of his fingers, Far teleported them into a private chamber and pulled out a delicacy from his home planet. Seeing Lu Sheng, he remarked that it reminded him of the day he first left his own planet. Lu Sheng initially thought Far had also come from a low-tier resource planet. Far downed his drink in one go and explained that his home wasn't just any resource planet. It was a brutal level 4 battlefield star that had been obliterated over 3,000 years ago. Our boy worried he'd touched a nerve, but Far waved it off and said it didn't matter. He asserted that it was simply the fate of most planets once they became battlegrounds. He even counted himself lucky. Before his planet completely fell, the Yamu sector government had already begun relocating citizens. But this was exactly what he'd been hoping to do for Earth. Far noticed the look on his face and nodded, then clarified that not everyone could be relocated, and further explained that only registered citizens were eligible with no criminal record, strength at 9th level or higher, and most importantly, they must have potential. Lu Sheng frowned, asserting that the conditions sounded too harsh. He asked if voluntary migration was an option. Far confirmed it was, but added that every life-supporting planet in each star sector was already catalogued. A few individuals migrating wasn't an issue, but any large-scale move required Federation approval. Without it, they'd be treated as fugitives. He admitted that their department deported over 100 billion every year, and then shipped them off to battlefield stars or mining resource planets as forced labor. Lu Sheng called the system a bit tyrannical, but Far just shrugged, explaining that such rules were necessary to maintain order among all life forms across the universe. If planets started collapsing and people began seizing others' worlds at will, it would throw everything into absolute chaos and describe it as madness without end. He then asked how much it would cost to buy a life-supporting planet. Far remarked that Lu Sheng's home was still classified as a resource planet and the invasion had barely begun, yet he was already thinking about relocation. Still, he revealed that a basic-level life planet would cost several 100 million black crystal coins. Anything more advanced would obviously be way more expensive. And by advanced, Far meant planets capable of sustaining 9th-level martial artists and beyond. If they couldn't handle that, destruction was just a matter of time. But Far reassured him that Lu Sheng wouldn't need to spend a dime. With his potential, reaching the 11th level would earn him noble status along with land of his own. Sure, there were taxes, but for powerful people, that was pocket change. That's when our boy's eye lit up, so he raised his glass and toasted to Far, but his mind already racing with plans. Afterward, Far shared more about the structure of the universe, while Lu Sheng returned to the dream realm. Far, generous as ever, handed him a stockpile of high-density energy crystals, and Lu Sheng's immortal cells evolved once again. In just 1 month, he had burned through tens of millions of black crystals, leaving Far completely shocked. He marveled that in over 4,000 years he'd never seen such a monstrous prodigy, and his expectations for Lu Sheng soared even higher. He ordered his crew to keep the black crystals coming. Inside the dream realm, Lu Sheng had already left Earth and arrived on another planet. There, he encountered a terrifying dude wielding a giant axe. Its speed was so overwhelming that Lu Sheng couldn't react in time before being cleaved in half, and the attack was so powerful that it split the entire planet. He woke up gasping for air, wide-eyed as he remarked, "So this was the might of a 12th level." The dude was named Shalus, and from that moment our boy made up his mind, saying before reaching the Yamu sector, he would defeat him. Day after day he trained relentlessly. Finally, the day before arrival, he achieved victory. Not only had he crushed Shalus, but he'd absorbed a mountain of origin power, now tripled in strength. Soon they arrived at the Yamu Federation. As Lu Sheng stepped off the ship, Far welcomed him warmly. Lu Sheng stretched and asked what to do next. Far decided they'd start with registration and explain because without it he couldn't do anything here. Lu Sheng yawned and told him he'd leave it to him. Far waved it off as no big deal, but added with a grin that Lu Sheng was his recruit after all. Lu Sheng caught that smug look, but it wasn't hostile, so he let it slide. At the registration place, everything was already arranged. In no time, an attendant handed Lu Sheng his citizen ID. He glanced at the card. It showed his name, race, homeworld, identity, and current level. He remembered Far saying new citizens started at level 1, but his card showed level 3. The staff explained that since he was personally recommended by an executor officer, his level was bumped up. He went on to explain that citizenship rank was tied to strength, talent, assets, and connections. Lu Sheng thought to himself that if one referral got him to level 3, then nobility at 11th level didn't seem far off. The staff continued saying there were also 10 million black crystal coins already loaded into the card, which was a gift from Far. Lu Sheng mused that Far was quite generous, because even plundering star pirates never brought him this much. Still, He suspected he hadn't gotten all of their loot. Maybe some of it had been folded into their ID cards. He was asked to wait for a while since Far was busy discussing something with someone named Dodd. In the meantime, Lu Sheng was free to help himself to some desserts. Naturally, food was never something our boy would ever turn down. He started snacking, casually checking his storage space while munching, but as he finished the last of the treats, his teeth hit something rock hard. He spat it out, grumbling that it nearly cracked his tooth. Upon closer look, it was a dark blue, weird-looking insect. He wondered if it was some kind of space bug, only for his heart to skip a beat. Out of nowhere, his 10,001st immortal cell had just awakened. Staring at the half-eaten bug, he was stunned by how much energy such a tiny thing contained. Then he shrugged, popped it back in his mouth, and remarked that it was surprisingly crunchy, tasted like chicken. Suddenly, a woman's voice echoed from outside, calling out for someone named Bobby. The staff rushed to the door and explained that this was VIP area. The woman outside introduced herself as Vera and insisted that she was a VIP too. She claimed she'd just seen Bobby walk in and snapped at the receptionist to get out of her way. Lu Sheng glanced toward the commotion. The staff tried blocking her, but she barged straight in anyway. She marched right up to Lu Sheng and accused him of stealing Bobby. Not only that, she asserted that she could smell Bobby.